Greetings to everyone out there in the NoDQ galaxy. Welcome to NoDQ video here on NoDQ.com and the YouTube channel, youtube.com/AaronRiftNoDQ. I have your questions from twitter.com/AaronRift using the hashtag NoDQvideo. Let's go ahead and get started. First one today comes from Michael. Hey Aaron, is Ronda Rousey moving to Smackdown next year in the shakeup because of Fox wanting star power on their network? That has definitely been a story that people have speculated on, with Fox Network wanting some major star power on SmackDown Live. I could definitely see that as a possibility. Before he got sick, I was thinking Roman Reigns would be the big star to jump to SmackDown. You have to feel that WWE wants to do something significant with SmackDown, even though it's Survivor Series, Raw pretty much destroyed SmackDown. You would think in 2019, with the money that WWE is making from Fox, WWE will want those numbers as high as possible. Now, with Roman Reigns' future being in doubt with WWE, I think Ronda Rousey is the next possibility that we could see her jump over to SmackDown. There's been the talk that SmackDown will be more of a sports-oriented show. So it does make sense to have Ronda go to SmackDown to try and boost up the star power. Let's be real here. Her on Raw, it isn't exactly moving numbers at this point. Maybe it would help SmackDown. I think it could do her some good to have some new opponents on SmackDown. She's pretty much been involved with most of the Raw roster at this point. So I think it's definitely a possibility. Will it happen? Only time will tell. This one comes from the Sinic Saint. When is WWE going to start using Shelton Benjamin? Why bring him back if they're just going to have him miss SmackDown Live TV? The point in bringing back Shelton Benjamin was to use him as a veteran to help work with some of the younger talent. Same reason guys like Rhino and Mickie James were brought back. They were not brought back to be top-tier television stars. They were brought back to help elevate the younger talent and work with the new guys. Shelton Benjamin, I don't think is ever going to get any kind of big push in WWE again. He did have that run with Chad Gable, but other than that, he's being used on live events and he's being used to help the other talent and put them over. That's his role at this point. So if you're looking for him to be on TV every week getting a big push, it's probably not going to happen. And another one here from Sinic Saint regarding Apollo Cruz. Whatever happened to Apollo Cruz's renewed push? Has the writing team already forgotten about their plans for him? I think it's just a case where Vince McMahon had his toy and he got tired of playing with the toy after a while and decided to focus on another toy. Apollo Cruz, I feel, is one of those guys, as I mentioned in the video with Caitlin from last week. I feel like Apollo is one of those guys that could definitely benefit from jumping to SmackDown in 2019 and turning heel. Not even a jump to SmackDown, just turning heel. He needs a full-blown character change. Just having him come out there and randomly win over somebody isn't going to reinvent him. He needs a creative overhaul. He needs a character change. In my opinion, you got to turn him heel. He needs an edge. He has pretty much no edge at this point. And I'm not talking about Adam Copeland. I'm talking about the fact that there's really no reason to care about the guy. And WWE, pretty much the announcers and everybody acknowledged on television that he has no personality. So that's almost like the kiss of death when you do that to a talent, when you basically tell the viewers, hey, this guy really doesn't have a personality and there's really no reason to care about him. WWE needs to give fans a reason to care about Apollo Crews. And I got this one here from Cruddies. Hey Aaron, what happened to Aiden English? Creative has nothing for him. I mean, I could pretty much just answer your question with that one comment. And I will pretty much say what I said about Apollo Crews. It's more the same. Vince liked Aiden English saw him as a toy, but after a while, Vince gets tired of his toys and wants a new one to play with. Aiden English was definitely a novelty gimmick with this singing. However, I felt like WWE could have gotten more mileage out of that gimmick. And I'm happy it did last as long as it did, but at the same time, I think like he probably was never in the plans to get any kind of push whatsoever, but the singing gimmick somehow caught on, and WWE did give him an opportunity to be on TV for a while. But now they pretty much have moved on to other people, and yeah, I don't have high hopes for Aiden English moving forward, and I think it's a shame because I think the guy is really talented, and I think the gimmick is awesome, and I think you could have done more with it. So it's definitely disappointing, but realistically, I don't see WWE really doing much with him again at this point. Got this one here from Kyle Allen. What are your thoughts on the passing of Dynamite Kid? Well, he was in poor health for a number of years, so it's not like I was shocked about the news. Regarding how I feel, obviously it's never a good thing when somebody loses their life. I wouldn't say I'm like all that sad because I've heard a lot of negative stories about him. He's one of those polarizing guys where on one hand, you look at Dynamite Kid and you have to respect what he did as far as being ahead of his time goes. He was somebody that in that era of WWE when you just had the big guys doing limited wrestling, you had somebody like Dynamite Kid who could really go in the ring, had great conditioning, he was just intense as hell, and he was a major influence for guys like Chris Jericho and Chris Benoit and countless others. He was ahead of his time. He would have done really well in the 90s, in the 2000s. In the 80s, he was a trailblazer. So on one hand, you look at the guy and you gotta respect what he did for the business. But then you see the dark side and all these stories about him. And, you know, it's hard to really have those kind of feelings for him and be really sad about it just because you know what he did in his personal life wasn't exactly the most honorable stuff. But it's still sad nonetheless. It's still sad anytime somebody loses their life, and the guy did have his accomplishments and should be recognized for his accomplishments. No question about it. This one comes from SCW Wrestling Channel. Hey Aaron, what are your favorite TLC matches and what has been your favorite TLC pay-per-views? What have been your favorite TLC pay-per-views? Well, favorite TLC match is not at a TLC pay-per-view. My favorite TLC match would be the SummerSlam 2000 match, Hardys, Edge and Christian, Dudley Boys. Also the WrestleMania 17 rematch. And then that TLC match that included Jericho and Benoit, the one that was on Smackdown. I also liked CM Punk versus Jeff Hardy from 2009 and John Cena versus Edge from, I believe it was Unforgiven 2006. As far as the TLC pay-per-views go, a lot of them haven't really stood out to me. Like, I am struggling to remember what happened on those pay-per-views. But I will say probably my favorite one was the 2012 one with The Shield once they started to get going. I remember that match when it took place. I was worried The Shield would look weak in the match and they would be like Nexus again, where they would just have this strong showing leading up to the pay-per-view, but then lose. I was pleasantly surprised when they did win at that TLC pay-per-view. So yeah, I think I would go with 2012 because that's the one that stands out to me the most. But overall, I would say the TLC pay-per-views for the most part have been disappointing, and I think a lot of that is just the fact that I'm not a fan of the themed pay-per-views and just randomly doing a TLC match just for the sake of doing a TLC match because it's mandatory. You have to because you have a pay-per-view that bears the title. This one comes from Oscar. With WWE moving TakeOver before WrestleMania 35 to Friday night, was this more of a smart business decision or more about the New Japan Ring of Honor show at the Garden? Well, I think it just goes to show that WWE actually does see Ring of Honor and New Japan as a threat. I think they really want to be able to sell out NXT. They traditionally sell more tickets for NXT anyways. The Hall of Fame usually struggles to sell out. NXT for WrestleMania weekend does sell out. WWE makes more money with NXT, so I think they're looking at it from a business perspective. I think there is a legitimate fear that they will not sell out because so many people bought tickets to that Ring of Honor New Japan show. Hall of Fame's going to do really bad. I mean, it's going up against that show, and in recent years, the Hall of Fame has not sold out. WWE has struggled to sell tickets for that. And this year could be one of the weakest attended Hall of Fames ever. Would not shock me if they only had like a half house for it. But yeah, I think right now of the two shows, I think it's more critical to WWE that NXT sells out and they sell as many tickets for that as possible. Hence, moving NXT to Friday night. And they must really feel that way, that it is necessary because, you know, part of the logistics to doing NXT on Saturday is that you can set up the Hall of Fame Friday night, then you have to take that down, and on Saturday, you set up the general ring configuration for NXT, and you can keep that configuration for Raw and SmackDown. But now, doing NXT on Friday, you have to get rid of the ring configuration, do the Hall of Fame configuration, and then go back to doing the ring configuration for Raw and SmackDown. But obviously, they must feel it's financially worth it. Got this one here from They See Me Rollins. Was the 2007 WWE Draft the worst? Most of the picks were mid-carders who ended up leaving after a year or injured and suspended, and then there was Chris Benoit. Well, I think you make good points about the 2007 draft. I really don't remember a lot of details about it or much of the other drafts. I do remember the 2008 one being pretty weak with Jim Ross going to SmackDown and Michael Cole going to Raw. But other than that, I don't remember a lot of details. Also, that was the year of the $1 Million Mania, which to me was a big dud. I'm not sure when the draft stopped, whether it was 2009 or 2010 or 2011, but whatever the last year was, I would probably say was the worst because as the years went on, it got more watered down as WWE stopped really caring about the brand split. So I'll just by default go with the last year as the weakest one. Got this one here from Boogeyman79. Hey Aaron, what do you think of CM Punk pulling the same stunt as Enzo at Survivor Series? Do you think it would be a good excuse to not ever come back to WWE? I do not see CM Punk doing any kind of stunt like that, to be perfectly honest with you. Enzo, I feel, still has some passion about WWE. I feel like despite everything that went down, if WWE offered him the opportunity to come back, he would. He would return to WWE and do his thing again. CM Punk, however, I feel is, first of all, completely done with wrestling, so it really doesn't matter. But if he was going to come back to wrestling, the last thing he would do is show up at a WWE event in the audience. CM Punk is one of those guys that if he comes out of retirement, everybody is going to be calling him. He can work anywhere he wants. If he's going to stick it to WWE, he's going to go somewhere like Ring of Honor or New Japan or All Elite Wrestling if that gets going. He's not going to be interested in going back to WWE for publicity. Let's just put it that way. Got this one here from DJ Whitey. Sup, Aaron? Why do you think Abyss chose to not jump ship with all the other major names in TNA to WWE? Do you think he could have been successful in the current WWE machine? I think it just came down to timing. When there was the talk about Abyss coming to WWE, I feel like it just would not have been a good opportunity because WWE already had tons of big guys at that time. You had The Undertaker, you had Kane, you had Big Show, you had Snitsky, you had Heidenreich, you had Luther Reigns, and the list goes on and on. Abyss, I feel, would probably have gotten lost in the shuffle around that time that he was rumored to be negotiating with WWE. he had a good position in TNA also. They needed some big guys. Abyss was a larger-than-life type character, and he was getting pushed strongly. He was the monster Abyss. He was being utilized well in TNA, and I'm very critical of TNA. I have been for many years, but they did do a good job with Abyss as far as pushing him as a monster and protecting him and getting the most out of him as a character. And for whatever reason, things did not work out timing-wise. He was with TNA, and maybe if there was interest from WWE, he was already under a long-term contract, and things did not work out. Could he end up in WWE? Never say never, but I think now, because of his age, it's unlikely. He's one of those few TNA names that did not end up with WWE, and anything is possible. Maybe it will happen, but I would say at this point, the odds are against it. Got this one here from Garrett Mills. I wonder how WWE can have a crap show one week, but a week later the show is terrific. It's like the writers or the wrestlers came to work one week and just didn't feel like putting in the effort, and the next week they did. It's much like all forms of entertainment, whether it's movies or television or music. Sometimes you have a good show, sometimes you don't. And there can be various circumstances. Sometimes it might be an issue of the writers having a bad day. Maybe the producers are having a bad day. Maybe the talent's having a bad day. Maybe everybody's clicking and everything's working out one week. The next week, everyone might be off sync. So there can be a lot of different circumstances as to why the shows are uneven. One week it's good, one week it's not. It just depends. And who knows, because we're not behind the scenes. We don't know what's going on. But my general opinion is that when you have a lot of cooks in the kitchen, it's going to be a scenario where the show is going to be uneven more times than not. I think the fewer people running things, the more consistently good something is going to be. That'll wrap it up for this edition of NoDQ Video. Thank you all so much for watching and continuing to support the website and channel. If you enjoyed today's video, please subscribe, share this video with a friend, your family, anybody you know who watches wrestling. Have them check out NoDQ Video. The word of mouth really goes a long way. And stay tuned to NoDQ.com for the very latest WWE news and rumors and the very latest regarding TLC. On that note, I will see you all next time.